Good morning, good afternoon, Boomi community. I am Gemma Allen with theCUBE, and we are here at Boomi World 2026. I am joined by my co-host, John Furrier, and we are hot off what was an excellent keynote. So let's get away from the hype for a second, John. Let's talk about what we just heard, which was a great 2 hours of show from Steve Lucas and his team. What are your thoughts?
I love Steve Lucas. He's kind of a showman. He's got that Steve Jobs vibe. He referenced Steve Jobs multiple times about innovation, but the reality was really much, to me, grounded in all his talk. He talked about the problems and the opportunities in the enterprise. He used metaphors like referees in sports. He had a really wide-ranging, kind of theoretical, kind of a high-level view to kind of set the context for this AI wave, and he actually waited 6 minutes before he said the word AI. He actually referenced the 2 letters, and I'm sure there's probably an over-under going on of the Boomi team around when is he going to say AI, but clearly AI is the wave, and the analysis is clear. We've covered Boomi now for almost a decade through their different evolutions, part of Dell, not part of Dell, all the work they've done on iPads, and they got a great tech team, and their customers love Boomi, mainly because the tech is strong and their integrations are seamless, and the speed of integrations with multiple legacies, whether it's companies that's acquiring a bunch of companies, is off the charts in terms of capabilities. When you add in this agentic infrastructure that we've been covering here on SiliconANGLE and theCUBE, you've been doing it on your AGNT podcast with Raphael, is setting the table for the horses on the track. There are a lot of players that are going for this control plane, and to me the top story is, and I wrote a Substack and LinkedIn post, I'm going to post it on SiliconANGLE, but the AI control plane is hitting Chicago here at Boomi World because they have a very strong opinion of this, and to me, they nailed it with the enterprise. Most people are obsessed over models, token economics, those things, certainly important, but at the end of the day, the enterprise is ultimately going to decide, because that's where the work's getting done, that's where the agents will thrive as they pivot off of, or extend off of all the coding values come out. So agents are the next wave behind the coding, and Boomi's been doing this.
He made some great references, right? I will say, we see a lot of tech leaders in show, behind curtain, front to curtain, and I think Steve Lucas is a very charismatic, dynamic leader, right? He delivered some of those messages really well. One thing I thought was very clear was, it felt like a grown-up conversation around AI, right? He wasn't saying that everybody is agentic ready, or that we have swarms of agents running enterprise. He was saying that there's a trust layer, and there's some building that needs to happen on the ground, inside of workflows, and inside of enterprise broadly, and we need to be clear about what that looks like, right? And one thing is clear, John, he talked a lot about data, and data activation, and what it takes for legacy, ERPs and all of these systems to connect 5 years from now, right? Like what that actually looks like, and how the shape and motion of that data is changing, and that I think is the Boomi value proposition of tomorrow, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the speed game is critical right now in this world, because the velocity of the pace of change of the models and the software infrastructure on the scale side is happening at a breakneck speed. The Boomi Orchestrate really set that tone, because he talked about Isaac Newton, laws of gravity and data in motion. He talked about complexity, and if you want to make things go faster, you make things lighter. And he talked about the forever problem, which he turned into the forever opportunity, and that forever problem is complexity. And complexity can be an opportunity. If you simplify things, make things go faster, that's where the action will be. Now, I love the reference to the data, because in the Orchestrate platform of the agentic stack that he showed, governance was huge. And we hear this all the time, Gemma, on theCUBE, certainly at the NYSE CUBE studios. We're hearing that in the Wired community as well, is that like, look at, governance has got to be grounded in day one. Make the data great, and then good things will happen. That's the success formula for agents. Not just throwing agents out like you're a 16-year-old with your driver's license for the first time, and that's what shadow AI has become, and he kind of referenced that. So I think he's got the story nailed down, but he's trying not to lean into the hype too much, because it is a tailwind for Boomi, but he's really trying to ground the conversation into data, integration is a table stake, not like, hey, let's integrate things together. So, the system element is key, and I think making things work as a system is ultimately what enterprises want, and he's singing that song beautifully on stage, and I thought it was a home run on that piece. I like his flair. He had great flair. I love the Steve Jobs reference, one more thing. And it really does speak to the reality that he's kind of grounding in. So I think IBM had a similar approach at their conference where they're trying to get this business model transformation, business transformation message out there because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to set a generational position for companies. So Boomi could do that for business. Not just be an iPaaS vendor and integrating applications together, they could actually take that expertise and apply that more broadly in a more meaningful way for our company. So the enterprises will be the true test. Can Boomi get it done? They got the piece parts, they got the system view. It's going to be coming down, how fast can they scale up, Gemma? That's what I'm watching for, is that can their go-to-market bring this out faster? And I think the integration story is the new middleware. Middleware goes away as we know it. This is an agent layer. I call it a control plane, people call it other things, but you saw it all play out.
Well, let's talk about the defense-offense strategy, right? Because one thing was clear from Steve Lucas, he's not buying in on this SaaS apocalypse debate, right? He was saying there will always be a need for multiple vendors to a certain degree across enterprise, and you need that from a competitive perspective, from an efficiency perspective. And he really kind of, I think, did something that not a whole lot of leaders are doing right now. He didn't dance around the why, There's a little bit of ambiguity out there. People are afraid to say, right? But he was very clear. He was like, we need referees. We need to have, a system whereby we don't have people vibe coding. He gave a great example of his own inability, or his, I guess, to vibe code and creating some stuff and sending it to a CFO one evening. So I thought some of his stories were very relatable. But when we think about the vibe coding debate, he also talked about if you were to vibe code an agent that once sent you to London, right, from O'Hare to London, and you are 2 degrees off, you'll end up in Paris. But I thought that was actually a really, really funny and good way of looking at it. He was saying, listen, we don't have a world where one orchestrator will own everything, nor are we going to have a world where everyone is necessarily a technologist, right? And those are things that are not really being said publicly.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be one orchestration layer to rule the world. I think he's right on that. I think also, his mention of vibe coding is interesting. If you look at vibe coding, it's just a precursor to getting people excited. All the momentum in the marketplace, if you look at all the hyperscalers, you're starting to see more structured coding coming in, more non-deterministic, deterministic workflows. You're starting to see payment and payment rails being built into agents. So a lot more work's going to get done over the next year on some of these more things that have to be hardened. But he actually had that quote about the referee. He said, we need referees, we need rules, but we must rethink the rules because they don't exist as they used to. And I love that line because it points to the fact that if you have governance built in, the rules of the road have to be established. Once that's done, agents won't be running around crazy, they'll get reined in to a much more scalable approach. So I think he nailed that piece. In terms of the SaaS apocalypse, I was talking to some of the Boomi folks here this morning. I actually interviewed Matt Rogers, the founder of Nest. He was an early Apple employee. He worked with Steve Jobs on the iPhone. His partner, Tony Fadell at Nest, were very much big Apple. I asked him about that, and he had a great answer for the SaaS apocalypse, which Steve Lucas was echoing in the Jobs Apple kind of tie-in to the keynote. Matt told me that the big debate at Apple at that time when iPhone was being developed before 2007 release was, it's going to kill the iPod. The iPod was the #1 selling device Apple had, and there was actually a debate inside Apple that said, wait a minute, that's our #1 selling product. This is going to kill that. Jobs said, no way, we're doing the iPhone. He pulled this typical Steve Jobs and said, we're making it happen. The iPhone has the iPod built in, but it's also a phone, it's a computer, it's an app store. So I think the iPhone, iPod metaphor really is a better orientation around SaaS apocalypse, because if you're going to be in the 1,000 songs in your pocket piece of it, which he referenced, you're going to die because a better product will come along. So I think SaaS is key. Now, coming back to the big conversation in the industry, we hear, oh, SaaS is going to kill Salesforce, a CRM. SaaS is going to kill Workday, it's an ERP. If you look at what he said about referees, he said ERP's the referee. In other words, the rules can be in a system of record, you can have a system of intelligence, you can have a system of engagement, but now you're going to have a system of execution. I think that's something that we've been writing a lot about on SiliconANGLE, is that the execution risk is a lot higher than just hand-waving strategy around deploying AI. So I think he tied it all together nicely in a very elegant, simple business way. So I thought he didn't go in the weeds, didn't get too techie. He had some demos, but I think he really nailed the referee, saying, hey, we need that system of record, we need the rules. And then once the governance is tied in, that's in the Orchestrate platform, you can build, and then you can have the runtime. So I think that all hangs together. Again, back to my point. Boomi is under a lot of pressure because they have what it takes. Can they do the go-to-market? Can they scale up to the customers? That's going to be the question that everyone's going to be asking, and that's what we're going to ask Steve Lucas when he comes on.
Well, one thing's clear, they certainly seem to have the trust of their community and their clients and customers, so I think some great conversations to be had this afternoon. John, last question, what are you looking forward to? What questions are you planning to ask that maybe weren't asked or weren't covered on the stage this morning?
Well, I'm going to try to get in the weeds a little bit in one area, that is the customers. Boomi has got great loyal customers. I was talking to a few customers last night in the hallways here. They are super loyal because again, their iPaaS experience has a lot of work. They've done the hard work on integration, on legacy systems in IT, the enterprise. So I'll be curious to know what their customers are doing with the products, Orchestrate, what use cases do they have, what customer examples do they have. I want to hear customer stories that aren't fluffy marketing stories. I want to hear how I'm a frontier leader. I want to hear how I've convinced my organization. I want to see some shadow AI in action that converts into rules and scale. So to me, I think that's an area that is going to be very instructive, Gemma. So we'll see how he answers that question.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, John.
Yeah.
I'm Gemma Allen here with John Furrier. We are covering Boomi World 2026. We have some great guests coming on the show this afternoon. Stay tuned.